upon us. Christ, have mercy upon us. Lord, have mercy upon us. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Almighty God, who in thy wisdom and goodness hast appointed the office of rulers and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of men, we beseech thee to behold with thy abundant favor us thy servants, whom thou hast been pleased to call to the performance of importance thrust in these islands. Let thy blessing descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we may treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote thy honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of these islands, and of those whose interest thou hast committed to our charge. And this we beg for Jesus Christ his sake. Amen. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Ghost be with us all evermore. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Bill. Members, the House is now in session. Into prayers, the confirmation of minutes for the 12th of November have been circulated. Amendments are just made to them. There are none. The minutes will be printed, will be circulated as printed. The messages from the governor, there are none. Announcements by the speaker. I have two announcements this morning. One that I received notification from MP Tiro that he'll be absent today. And I just wanted to be noted because he did notify us. Thank you. And the second is just a reminder of a circulation from the CPA in reference to the Public Accounts Committee Chair, Oversight, Public Finance and Good Governance Forum. Thank you. It's going to take place next week. It was circulated to all members. Members, if you wish to participate in that forum, please register for it. Forum will be, in fact, the chairman of Public Accounts, MP Opposition Leader Cole Simons, will be participating in the discussion on one of the panels. So feel free, members, to register. That's next week, Tuesday at 12:15 p.m. Bermuda time. But please register before that. Thank you. That's the announcements by the speaker. Messages from the Senate. There are none. Papers and other communications to the House. We have papers to be submitted this morning. The first is in the name of the Premier. Premier.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the consideration of the Honorable House Assembly the Tourism Investment Lauren at Pink Beach Order 2021, proposed to be made by the Minister responsible for tourism in the exercise of the power conferred by Section 3(1)A in conjunction with Section 5(1)A of the Tourism Investment Act 2017.
Thank you, Premier. The next is in the name of the Minister of Health. Minister?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,
Good morning.
I have to attach and submit for the consideration of the Honorable House of Assembly the Public Health COVID-19 Emergency Extension Number 7, Order 2021, proposed to be made by the Minister of Health in exercise of the power conferred by Section 107A of the Public Health Act 1949. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. The next two, in fact, are by the Minister of Education. Minister, would you like to do yours?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the information of the Honorable House of Assembly the Bermuda College audited financial statements for the year ending March 31st, 2021. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to attach and submit for the information of the Honorable House of Assembly the Bermuda College Annual Report 2020-2021. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, that brings us to a close of papers and communications for the House. The next order of paper petitions. There are none. The next item is the statements by ministers and junior ministers. And members, we have quite a few this morning. The first is in the name of the Premier. Premier, would you like to present your statement this morning?
Mr. Speaker.
Good morning.
Mr. Speaker, honorable members will be aware of the annual trek to London made by the heads of government of the overseas territories to conduct meetings with the ministers of the UK government on those issues that impact the peoples of the remaining British colonies. Mr. Speaker, following last year's virtual meeting, I am pleased to advise honorable members that I attended the Joint Ministerial Council, or JMC as it is known, for in-person meetings this year, and was pleased to have been joined by colleague premiers from other overseas territories. Mr. Speaker, Bermuda currently serves as the chair of the United Kingdom Overseas Territories Association, or UKATA, and as such, I was pleased to chair a meeting of the United Kingdom Overseas Territories Association Political Council as a preface to the JMC, and during which leaders had the opportunity to crystallize those issues on which we would present a united and settled position to the United Kingdom government. Unsurprisingly, Mr. Speaker, there were common experiences shared with respect to the global pandemic and the impact of the coronavirus on our economy.
What you doing?
Mr. Speaker, the meeting of the JMC consisted of a series of sessions on a variety of issues, and at which were present UK ministers to lead discussions to the benefit of the overseas territories. These sessions included Environment and Oceans, led by Lord Goldsmith, the IMO Code, led by Minister Courts, and the UK's permanent representative to the IMO, Katie Ware, the relationship between the United Kingdom and the overseas territories, economic resilience, law enforcement, health issues related to COVID-19 and mental health, led by Minister Argar and Ian Cummings, NHS Ambassador for the overseas territories. Mr. Speaker, the sessions were informative and afforded an opportunity to directly address those UK ministers and officials charged with policy making and implementation, which have a direct effect on the overseas territories and specifically Bermuda. Mr. Speaker, honorable members will no doubt recall the tragic death of Sir David Amos, the MP for Southend and chairman of the Bermuda All-Party Parliamentary Group. I had the opportunity, in the company of the Speaker of the House of Commons, to lay a wreath in his memory and on behalf of the government and the people of Bermuda. Mr. Speaker, following the recent changes in ministerial appointments in the United Kingdom, the Minister of State for the Overseas Territories is Amanda Milling, MP. Honorable members would have seen the media coverage of my meeting with her and the issues we discussed. Mr. Speaker, I would like to reiterate for this House that I took the opportunity to clearly set out the position of the government of Bermuda on the grant of assent to bills properly passed by the legislature. While it might be a convenient political point for honorable members opposite to make this about cannabis and that legislation, Mr. Speaker, this is a matter of principle. Bermuda's constitution is an advanced one and one adopted as a precursor to self-determination. It is the well-honored convention under that constitution that bills passed in the legislature will not be denied the assent of the governor. And as I indicated to Minister Milling, that is our expectation with respect to legislation on cannabis. Mr. Speaker, this stance is a necessary one because today it may be a regulated cannabis industry. Tomorrow, it may well be banking. The government cannot acquiesce to the delay or denial of those initiatives that will economically empower the people of this country and provide the access to capital that has been historically out of the reach for so many. Mr. Speaker, in the wake of Brexit and the UK's drift away from constructive European Union engagement, Bermuda has been left to its own devices to ensure that our interests is safeguarded in key political centers like Brussels. Following the JMC, I took the opportunity to support the Minister of Finance in bolstering Bermuda's reputation within the European institutions and to meet with broader government and industry stakeholders. Mr. Speaker, I met with William McFarlane, Director of Economics and Trade of the UK mission to the EU, and discussed the UK, EU, and Bermuda-EU relationships post-Brexit, as well as areas where Bermuda and the UK mission to the EU could deepen connections. This included in the important areas of vaccination certificate equivalents and EU mobility, climate change, and follow-up from COP26 and financial services. In addition to meeting with EU policymakers, it is crucial to meet with those whose research analysis informs those decision makers. I also met with one of the foremost thought leaders in Brussels, Carol Anu, CEO of the Center for European Policy Studies. CEPS is amongst the most influential European think tanks and among the top 10 think tanks in the world. In addition to procuring first-hand research analysis on EU proposals and regulations of importance to Bermuda, Mr. Lanu is also a regular speaker in hearings for national and international institutions and in public closed-door meetings with high-level actors. Mr. Speaker, this is an opportunity to discuss Bermuda's broader interests vis-a-vis the European Union, ranging from financial services to Solvency II to innovations within Bermuda's digital assets and renewable energy sector. This meeting helped identify potential synergies with CPS and for future areas of cooperation. And as a note, Mr. Speaker, the Brussels office has also joined as an official member of the Center for European Policy Studies. Mr. Speaker, I also attended and delivered a keynote speech at a dinner with government and industry partners based in Brussels, organized by the Government of Bermuda, Brussels office, and the British Chamber of Commerce, EU, and Belgium. Engagements such as these create multipliers for positive messaging about Bermuda and ensure that thought leaders and key stakeholders are well informed about the opportunities to do business on the island. Mr. Speaker, no visit to the United Kingdom is complete without engaging with Bermudian students who are living and working in England. Two events styled as dinner and dialogue with Premier were hosted in London and Manchester. Mr. Speaker, it is inspiring to share an evening with the diverse and talented women and men who are committed to their education and in most cases returning to Bermuda to contribute to their native land. Mr. Speaker, this marks my fourth most consequential JMC. The urgency that surrounds issues like the impact of climate change in overseas territories and the economic impact of the pandemic on such small island states provided a stark backdrop to the meetings and underscored the ongoing need for regional cooperation. In the 20 months since the declaration of the global pandemic, the world has seen the introduction of a global minimum corporate tax and a definitive shift in the approach of the G20 countries to those of us who make a living in the area of financial services. The direct engagement and the importance of safeguarding Bermuda's interests on the UK and EU stages has now taken on a new significance as the world seeks to move beyond the pandemic. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. The next statement this morning, members, is in the name of the Deputy Premier. Deputy Premier, would you like to put your statement at this time?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to members of the House and members of the listening public. Mr. Speaker, I wish to provide an update on my participation in the COP26 Conference of Parties conference held in Glasgow, Scotland. Honorable members of this House will be aware that I had the opportunity to represent Bermuda at this year's UN Climate Change Conference COP26 in Glasgow between 31st of October to the 12th of November. Through our London office and UK representative, Bermuda holds chairmanship of the United Kingdom Overseas Territories Association, UKOTA. UKOTA is recognized in the United Kingdom as the official association which exists to advance the interests of the United Kingdom Overseas Territories, facilitate cooperation between them, and promote solidarity. The association demonstrates the collective partnership between the territories and Her Majesty's government of the United Kingdom. As such, the United Kingdom facilitated our presence at COP26 as part of the UK delegation overflow, of which Bermuda led a delegation of 7 from across the territories. Mr. Speaker, it was an honor for myself to have led the delegation. Governments of the UK Overseas Territories are custodians of internationally important habitats which span the globe from the Antarctic to the Caribbean, Indian Ocean to the Pacific. All 14 territories are at the forefront of the impact of climate change as vulnerable small island states. We are also at the forefront of renewable energy, nature-based solutions, adaptation and resilience, ocean protection, and with global leadership in catastrophe risk reinsurance and climate finance. Together with the UK, the territories represent the world's 5th largest marine estate, which 75% is protected, containing over 90% of the UK's biodiversity. We recognize that we are vital to the UK meeting its pledge by 2030 to protect 30% of the world's oceans. Bermuda is not immune or isolated from the impacts of climate change. Our island is exposed to rising sea levels, increasing severe and frequent storms, and to changes in ocean currents and weather patterns. Isolated, beautiful, and unique, Bermuda is home to the most northerly coral reef system in the Atlantic Ocean, which is a critical habitat for marine biodiversity, as Bermuda is the only landmass in the Sargassum Sea, a floating rainforest of Sargassum seaweed that is home and spawning site for several species of threatened and endangered marine wildlife. We are a treasure trove of environmental wealth, a capital of ocean conservation, and a key player on the global stage of financial risk management. As an island community vulnerable to the effects of climate change, and as a global capital of climate-related financial risk management, we are determined that Bermuda will participate in the international response to ensure our collective safety and prosperity. To that end, we continue to declare that Bermuda is committed to increasing our protection of our fragile ecosystem, reducing our carbon footprint, and mitigating the impacts of climate change. Mr. Speaker, we are particularly proud of the work being done under the auspices of the Bermuda Ocean Prosperity Program, which will manage the Marine Spatial Plan. The Marine Spatial Planning will develop and legally adopt an enforceable, comprehensive EEZ-wide plan designed to sustainably manage resources and protect 20% of Bermuda's waters as a no-take fisheries replenishment zone. Our ambition, looking forward, is to be a thriving blue economy with the diversification of our national revenue and strengthen our sustainable use of our ocean resources and economic growth, improving livelihoods and jobs, and continued ecosystem health. Mr. Speaker, all of Bermuda's success and ambition in fighting climate change was featured at COP26. I had the pleasure of chairing an overseas territories event in the UK Pavilion on Nature Day entitled Our Vision for Healthy Oceans. The event, organized through UKATA, together with the UK Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, known as DEFRA, was thematically focused on raising awareness, protecting our oceans, and how the overseas territories are raising awareness, protecting our oceans, and how the overseas territories are taking action against climate change. The event, importantly, featured a powerful video collaboration of all of the overseas territories, highlighting how climate change impacts on marine life and sustainability. If any honorable member has not had the opportunity to see the video, I strongly encourage viewing this video, which can be found on the UK government YouTube channel. Mr. Speaker, immediately after the event, I met with the UK Minister for the Pacific and the International Environment, the Right Honourable Lord Zach Goldsmith, who later acknowledged, and I quote, "What these leaders are doing is simply heroic. Our overseas territories are protecting an area of water bigger than India. It's one of the best conservation wins of my generation." Lord Goldsmith's acknowledgement went further with commitments in the Joint Ministerial Council, in which the Premier, subject of his statement he made today, presided as president of Yukata Political Council. The UK government committed to working closely with overseas territory governments, where technical expertise were requested, and to prioritize climate change and environmental issues in future funding for the territories. The overseas territories committed to continuing to formulate ambitious climate targets and policies. As honorable members of the House will note, last week I announced that Bermuda is the first overseas territory to participate in the UK government's Blue Shield program, which supports the implementation of a comprehensive monitoring and surveillance regime within our exclusive economic zone, EEZ. Mr. Speaker, while in Glasgow, I participated in two other events. I was a guest speaker at the Bermuda Business Development Agency BDA luncheon, which was hosted by Hub Culture. I also was a guest panelist on Island Innovation's webinar at CUP. In London, we had an event with the BDA and the Association of Bermuda Insurers and Reinsurers, ABIR, to speak further to invited guests, including members of non-governmental organizations and environmental investment companies. Mr. Speaker, I am proud of the work achieved at COP26 in terms of hyper recognition within the UK and international community of Bermuda's efforts and success in this space. We agreed that a greater level of engagement will continue for all overseas territories, including the future conventions of biodiversity and climate change summits. Our efforts attracted the attention and were welcomed by His Royal Highness the Duke of Cambridge at the JMC. His Royal Highness stated, and I quote, "I am pleased overseas territories were represented at COP26, and you were able to not only voice your concerns, but also your efforts to tackle the immense problems you face," end quote. Mr. Speaker, the work continues, and our partnership with the UK and our fellow overseas territories in tackling climate change and accessing international funding is at the forefront of this government's work. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I want to recognize the stellar work of the London office, Ms. Kimberly Durant and her team, in organizing Yukata's participation in COP26. Through the efforts of Ms. Durant, Yukata had the highest number of participants that has ever had the opportunity to attend a COP event. She worked tirelessly to ensure our schedules, the videos, and the Nature Day event was well organized. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. The members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of Education. Minister, would you like to extend your statement?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, and good
You're right
morning,
here,
colleagues. Mr. Speaker, this morning I rise before this honorable House to lay the Bermuda College 2020-2021 annual report and its 2021 audited financial statements as required under Section 8(2) of the Bermuda College Act 1974. I will also give a report on the government's $300,000 annual grant and the College Promise Merit Program, both of which are provided as financial support for students to attend the Bermuda College. Mr. Speaker, one of the main functions of the Bermuda College Board of Governors is to deliver an annual report on the college activities and produce annual audited financial statements. I will first report on the Bermuda College annual report. The 2020-2021 annual report highlights the resilience demonstrated by faculty, staff, and students alike in ensuring that business operations, instruction, and learning proceeded with minimum disruption despite the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. The annual report also shows the progress made by the Bermuda College in key areas of its 5-year strategic plan, Vision 2023, delivering success. Mr. Speaker, some of the operational, academic, and technical activities undertaken by Bermuda College during the past year are as follows. A virtual site visit of the college was held by the New England Commission of Higher Education, NECHE, accrediting agency. This culminated in NECHE accepting the first 5-year interim report produced by Bermuda College. More than $6 million was raised for capital projects and student financial assistance by the Bermuda College Foundation and its donors. The building commenced for a state-of-the-art career development center renovation of one of its lecture theaters and upgrading of its IT infrastructure as a result of a generous gift of $3.8 million from Athene Life Re, Author Holdings, Aspen Insurance Holdings, and Catalina Insurance Holdings. There was increased enrollment of 6% in the academic divisions during a challenging period when comparable institutions grappled with enrollment. Additionally, PACE serviced 1,181 students compared to the 857 the previous year, an increase of 37%. Including 32 in January 2021, when it held its first winter commencement in over a decade. There were 15 graduates of the Mount St. Vincent University program, which represented the largest cohort in 10 years. In December 2020, 296 students earned international qualifications and workforce development certificates via the Division of Professional and Career Education, otherwise known as PACE. 109 public high school students earned their City and Guild entry-level introductory award in employability skills, and 16 students earned the Certificate of Nursing Assistance. Mr. Speaker, Bermuda College expanded its online program offerings with signed articulation or transfer agreements with overseas institutions such as Southern New Hampshire University, offering a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology or General Studies, and a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration or Technical Management. East Carolina University in the area of Coastal and Marine Science. Walden University for studies in nursing from an RN to a BSN program. And Framingham State University, where the first cohort of 13 students commenced the graduate program in educational leadership. The college has also established partnerships with the Association of Bermuda Insurers and Reinsurers, ABER, and St. John's University in New York to develop a talent pipeline for Bermudians to enter the reinsurance industry. The Division of Professional and Career Education recorded its first qualified Associate Chartered Certified Accountant, or the ACCA, graduate since the inception of the program. The PACE Division also achieved a commendable 25th ranking out of 200 community colleges in the Learning Resource Network, having registered over 90 students for online professional certification courses during the year. Mr. Speaker, student success undergirds all pedagogical strategies and initiatives in the college, and the following highlights are examples of student success. A partnership with Northampton University and the Bermuda Hospital Board led to 3 nursing graduates from Northampton University's Bachelor's of Mental Health program, of which 2 received excellence awards. In computer information systems, a second-year student took part in the Technology Leadership Forum, a government-sponsored internship involving multiple companies, and 2 students took advantage of summer internships with a Silicon Valley tech startup. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, something just went wrong with my computer just now. Okay. Additionally, 2 Earth Environmental Studies students participated in a 6-week-long weekend program for marine science scholars at the Bermuda Institute of Ocean Sciences, BIOS. The aim of the program was to reach students who could benefit from field and laboratory experience at BIOS. One student is now enrolled in the Marine Science program at Bermuda College. The other student will be attending the University of Plymouth in the fall to study ocean exploration surveying. Mr. Speaker, I will now shift to the fiduciary responsibility of the Bermuda College Board of Governors and pleased to report that the 2021 audited financial statements for the Bermuda College were unqualified, and as such, in the opinion of the Auditor General, the statements represent fairly the financial position of the Bermuda College at the end of the fiscal year 2021. The audited financial statements indicate that the Bermuda College had assets worth $22,692,466 and total liabilities of $17,336,538. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, it should be noted that the Bermuda College currently has no long-term debt. Cash and cash equivalents for the period increased by 27% to $3,807,943. The accounts receivable increased by $6.7 million to $1,132,591, and the accounts payable decreased by 22% and stood at $2,892,951 at the end of the 2021 fiscal year. Mr. Speaker, although there have been capital investments at the Bermuda College with the building of the Career Development Center and upgrades to the IT infrastructure, this did not occur before March 31st, 2021. As such, the capital assets reflected a depreciation as of March 31st and totaled $14,909,119. However, with the establishment of the Bermuda College Foundation, it is expected that there will be ongoing capital investments in the infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, the government grant to the Bermuda College remained at $15,906,000 during the 2020-2021 fiscal period, while other revenue decreased by $577,704 or 2.6%. However, total expenses also decreased by 9.2%, resulting in access revenue of $1,016,304. Mr. Speaker, the Bermuda College financial officers and the Office of the Auditor General have been working assiduously during the past year to ensure that Bermuda College complies with the financial standards of its accreditors, NICHI, and the Bermuda College Act. This goal has been achieved since the college submitted both its 2020-2021 audited financial statements and its 2020-2021 annual report by September 30, 2021. As of today, both documents have been presented to this honorable House. Mr. Speaker, I extend thanks to the Auditor General, Ms. Heather Thomas, and her team in the Office of the Auditor General for their efforts in bringing Bermuda College up to date with its audits. Additionally, thanks given to Mr. Dwight Ferbert, Vice President of Finance and Operations, and his team at the Bermuda College. Mr. Speaker, I will now report on the annual government tuition grant of $300,000 given to the Bermuda College for the financial support to students and share information on the College Promise Merit Award program. Mr. Speaker, let me speak first to the annual grant of $300,000. My honorable colleagues will recall that since September 2017, Bermuda College has been receiving an additional $300,000 specifically to support students in financial need. The purpose of the grant is to provide financial assistance of students in one of the three academic divisions or the professional and career education PACE division of the college. To qualify for the funding, students must demonstrate a financial need, and current students must also have a grade point average of 2.0 or higher. The tuition awards range from 30% to 100% of the student's educational costs, with the educational cost defined as the value of tuition plus fees. Mr. Speaker, this semester, 78 students received financial assistance from the tuition grants totaling $141,855. 25 students were enrolled in the Mount St. Vincent Business of Administration degree program. 23 were enrolled in business and finance programs. 15 were enrolled in health programs and 15 in service programs. Mr. Speaker, allow me to point out that since this tuition grant was instituted in 2017, a total of 174 students have graduated or earned a certificate. Of that number, Mr. Speaker, 99 have graduated with an associate's degree, diploma, or certificate from the academic divisions. 40 students have earned a workforce development certificate from PACE. 29 have earned their bachelor's degree from Mount St. Vincent University. 2 students have earned a master's degree from Miami University, and 4 students have earned their postgraduate teaching diploma from the University of West Indies. Our students are experiencing success from this tuition grant, which we expect will trickle down into the economy as they pursue jobs in their respective fields of study. Mr. Speaker, on the other hand, the College Promise Merit Program was introduced in 2019 specifically for high school students. This program allows qualifying public school students to attend the Bermuda College tuition-free immediately after their high school graduation. This is the 3rd year of the program, and I am pleased to share with my honorable colleagues that since its inception in 2019, 4 students have graduated from the Bermuda College. Currently, 65 students are participating in the College Promise program at the Bermuda College this year, of which 33 are new College Promise entrants and 32 are returning students. Mr. Speaker, this government remains committed to supporting our Bermudian students. They are taking the opportunity to pursue tertiary education and doing well in their pursuits. The government will continue to provide funding to assist to ensure that no student is denied a Bermuda College education due to lack of financing. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I want to commend the board chair and members, faculty, staff, and administration at the Bermuda College for their continued commitment to the operations and delivery of tertiary education at the Bermuda College during these unprecedented times. I invite this honorable house to read the annual report for details of the Bermuda College's accomplishments and successes for the 2020-2021 reporting period. Lastly, I encourage the general public to take advantage of the various courses and programs offered at the Bermuda College, where there are many paths. Discover yours. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, I believe there's a second statement in your name.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, but also, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to also point out that the statement posted on the Parliament website for the Bermuda College has some errors in it, and we did send a updated statement a couple of days ago. And so if we could get the correct one posted, I'd really appreciate it.
Okay. No problem. We'll have the SharePoint, have it adjusted on SharePoint and put the amended version up. So the next statement is yours as well, and you can present that now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today I present an update, a COVID-19 update in our school system. Mr. Speaker, I rise this morning in this honorable house to provide an update on the ongoing impact of COVID-19 in our schools and the preventative measures that have been put in place in both our public and private schools to keep our children safe. Mr. Speaker, you will recall that our honorable Premier has shared with us repeatedly, and this morning I'd say it again, the coronavirus is with us and will continue to be with us for some time. We must accept and make adjustments for what has become our new normal. In our public and private schools, this has meant finding creative and engaging ways to ensure quality teaching and learning environments for students in the classroom, as this is where our children learn best. Mr. Speaker, the beginning of the 2021-2022 school year was not without its challenges. Bermuda was in its 4th and deadliest wave of community spread from the virus. Public school staff were being sent home in unsustainable numbers even before school buildings were fully open. Our private school partners did begin the school year with in-class learning. However, several schools were hit with positive cases resulting in large numbers of students being placed in quarantine. One school had a delayed start and another one completely closed for a week. Mr. Speaker, the increased number of COVID positive cases caused the Ministry of Education to make the difficult decision to begin the 2021-2022 academic year with remote learning for public schools. Despite the setbacks, there has been continued collaboration with the Ministry of Health to put appropriate safety and health guidelines in place for our schools. Mr. Speaker, let me remind my honorable colleagues that towards the end of the 2020-21 academic year, through collaboration between the Department of Education and the Molecular Diagnostic Lab, MDL, a saliva screening pilot program was implemented in both public and private schools. The pilot program saw staff from MDL visit various schools to conduct saliva testing on consenting students and staff. Ultimately, students and staff consenting to participate in the program were tested at least once per month. The program proved to be successful in identifying asymptomatic cases. Resultingly, the saliva screening program was revised and has continued into the 2021-2022 school year, with all public schools testing weekly. At this point, I want to extend my thanks to our parents and staff for supporting the program and providing consent for their children to participate, as this will help to keep our schools safe. Mr. Speaker, both public and private schools have implemented key COVID-19 preventative safety measures to ensure safety in school buildings. Public schools introduced a pre-return testing policy, and that all staff and students were required to have a negative COVID-19 test to enter school buildings after a break in school. Private schools, on the other hand, have implemented the lateral flow testing for staff and students up to twice a week in most schools, which includes teaching staff, administrative staff, janitorial, and security staff. Mr. Speaker, research has shown that in-person learning is best for our students. The focus of our schools has been to minimize continuous disruption of student learning due to identified positive COVID cases in schools. The Ministry of Health has received input from the Ministry of Education, Department of Education, and our private schools, which has resulted in a revised approach on how close contacts and casual contacts are now treated in the event of positive cases having been identified in school. Instead of having a full class of students having to quarantine, the Department of Health Risk Assessment now allows for persons deemed as casual contacts to remain in school if an initial negative PCR test is obtained. However, close contacts are still required to quarantine as per usual. We are pleased about the change in policy, which has allowed more students to remain in school for in-class learning. Mr. Speaker, since schools have opened for the 2021-2022 school year, there have been 38 positive COVID cases to date, 14 in the public schools and 24 in the private schools. I am certain that the safety measures that have been put in place have helped to identify positive cases earlier and also allowed schools to remain open with continuous in-person learning for our children. Mr. Speaker, earlier this week, the Ministry of Health advised that schools could move from phase 1 to phase 2 of school COVID guidelines, which means our younger students from preschool to P3 do not have to wear face masks while inside the classroom. The intent is to review this policy in 2 weeks for a possible move to phase 3. Many in the community have advocated for a quicker move between the COVID protocol school phases, as other entities in Bermuda have quote unquote opened up. However, Mr. Speaker, I do wish to remind all that our schools are considered high to medium risk locations. Students are in classrooms approximately 3 feet apart from 8:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. daily. A relaxation of the school protocols too quickly and leading to an outbreak could cause an entire class or year level to be quarantined. This would negate our recovery and our movement towards a new normal. Mr. Speaker, each child sent home typically results in that household being quarantined. A household in quarantine can affect a parent's ability to work and other siblings' inability to attend school. Those other siblings may result in fellow students at other schools being affected and their respective households as well. If we stop and think about this, it is easy to see the potential knock-on effects of a positive case in a school. We want to, and we will, ease the restrictions, but this will be done with a need to balance the safety of our children and the need for them to remain in school. Mr. Speaker, this last outbreak, approximately 1/3 of the cases were children. And to my understanding, a few cases can be traced back to parents sending their children to childcare settings where other children were infected and then returned home to infect household members. While children may not be affected by COVID as adults, children tend to be around their elders, which may be more susceptible to COVID complications. With our prevalence of multi-generational households, this can be a real issue. The guidelines in schools have allowed us to have schools open and keep them open, but at the same time protect our community. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to do what is best for our students and their families to keep them in school and learning. While this may be an inconvenience to our adults at times, our focus will remain on keeping schools safe for in-person learning. Mr. Speaker, I want to take this time to thank the staff at the Ministry of Education, the Department of Education, the Ministry of Health, the Department of Health School Surveillance Team, the Department of Health School Surveillance Team, our private school partners, and the school testing team at the Bermuda Molecular Diagnostic Laboratory. It is generally the collaborative effort of all involved and their hard work and dedication to ensure our schools have programs that have enabled us to keep our students in school and be protected as much as possible from the Corona-19 virus. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of Health. Minister, would you like to put your statement down?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, honorable members. This time last year, I provided this House with an update on COVID-19 public health guidance. At that time, we had about 270 confirmed positive cases, and 1 or 2 people were in hospital. And that was the beginning of our second wave. As I speak to you today, with our 4th wave dwindling, we have had 5,730 confirmed cases of COVID-19, more than 300 hospitalizations, and sadly, 106 COVID-19 related deaths in the community. While the 4th wave exacted a toll on all of us, we in the Ministry of Health are convinced it would have been worse if not for the level of vaccination in our community. Vaccines do work. Our island data proves this. Mr. Speaker, the next step for all of us in Bermuda is to learn how to live with COVID-19. The pandemic is not over, so we must continue to follow public health guidelines to keep ourselves, our families, and our friends safe. As I've stated in this House before, and this is well worth repeating, success in dealing with COVID-19 requires a community effort. It is a community effort because this is one of the few situations where an individual's decision to adhere to public health measures or not impacts all of us. In this pandemic, individual choices can and do have island-wide consequences. In keeping with the decrease in levels of community transmission of the virus that causes COVID-19, the government is making the following changes to the Public Health COVID-19 Emergency Powers Phased Reopening Regulations 2021. The size of large groups will now increase from 30 to 50, and this includes weddings and funerals, as well as island boats in respect of the use of safety. In restaurants, members clubs, and bars, tables no longer need to be spaced 6 feet apart. However, for the time being, these establishments will still be restricted to seated service only. With respect to recreational boating, raft-ups are permitted once again. And students enrolled in a school testing program will be able to use a student-safe 7-day pass issued after a negative test result to enable them to dine indoors with parents or guardians who have safe keys. And this also will apply to their ability to attend youth sporting and recreational activities that also require a safe key. Mr. Speaker, having a school testing program in Bermuda's public and private schools has provided a great opportunity for flexibility when it comes to dining. It applies to students that are 11 years of age and under. For young children who are 4 years of age and under, they will be able to dine indoors at a restaurant as long as their parent or guardian has safety. We will be working with the schools to implement the student 7-day pass as early as next week. Additional public health guidance will be amended to state that remote working is no longer strongly recommended. Offices can be opened with proper public health measures in place. Also, movie theaters, galleries, museums are to be allowed, providing physical distancing of 3 feet with masks being worn at all times indoors. The legislation and guidance changes will take effect, Mr. Speaker, from Monday, the 29th of November. Mr. Speaker, I cannot overemphasize the importance of continuing with good public health measures. Wear your mask, wash your hands, and maintain a physical distance of 6 feet from others in crowded indoor and outdoor settings, and particularly if you do not know the vaccination status of the people you are with. Again, to repeat myself, this is not the same as choosing not to wear a helmet or choosing not to use your seatbelt, where the person you are most likely to harm is yourself. Failure to follow public health measures has a far more significant impact as the virus spreads quickly throughout our island home, affecting families, schools, businesses, and more. Mr. Speaker, in addition to assessing and making changes to the emergency power regulations, the government is reviewing the island's travel protocols as well. Taking into consideration vaccination levels within countries where the majority of our travelers are coming from, the vaccination levels here in Bermuda, as well, we are looking at amending our requirements to ensure we are competitive. We will be changing the pre-arrival test requirements to accept antigen testing, which are less expensive and easier for travelers to Bermuda to acquire, as well as the PCR test. We are also reviewing the follow-up testing once on island. The changes are aimed at allowing vaccinated visitors to begin enjoying Bermuda quickly without an extended period of quarantine upon arrival. Finally, Mr. Speaker, we are making adjustments to enable residents who travel abroad for less than 72 hours to use their pre-departure test that's obtained in Bermuda as their pre-arrival test upon their return, and this will facilitate quick trips overseas. These changes will require amendments to the Quarantine COVID-19 No. 3 Order 2020 and will be finalized shortly. Mr. Speaker, visitors to the island support our hotels, our restaurants, our bars, and our taxis. They participate in a variety of experiences and visit the diverse attractions the island has to offer. They rent mini cars and mopeds and in general provide an invaluable boost to our local economy. In short, visitors support jobs. As we put in place protocols and policies which will support our economic recovery, it is only natural to consider our border controls and travel testing regime. Mr. Speaker, the ministry has learned a lot about this particular virus and how to cope in a pandemic over the past almost 2 years. The learning curve was steep, and the impacts of COVID-19 on the island and the world were unprecedented in our lifetime. As Christmas gets closer, I would like to take this opportunity to provide public health advice on how to manage as we live with COVID-19 and learn to live with it we must. The government has worked to strike a balance between risk mitigation and the economic impact of taking precautions. With 70% of the total population fully vaccinated and 79% of the eligible population vaccinated, the emphasis shifts to economic recovery. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, you will be aware that one of the most important steps an individual can take to stop the spread is to simply wear a mask, and that remains, and it applies whether or not you are vaccinated. Masks should be worn by workers at all workplace premises, people using public transportation or taxis, any person visiting an indoor establishment such as a grocery store, a shop, a bank, an office, etc., unless otherwise allowed by specific guidance such as that which would apply in bars, restaurants, and gyms, and in crowded outdoor settings where other persons are present and a 6 feet distance cannot be maintained. Also, Mr. Speaker, as we attend Christmas parties in the coming weeks, please be aware that social mixing is identified through contact tracing investigations as a primary means by which COVID-19 transmission occurs. Social mixing can lead to a less robust adherence to public health protocols, so I strongly encourage everyone to be careful and responsible. Mr. Speaker, above all, vaccination is key to living with COVID-19. It reduces the severity of COVID-19 if you get infected, and it reduces hospitalizations as well as deaths. As reported yesterday, Mr. Speaker, the booster vaccine is now available to anyone 18 years of age or older who has had their second COVID vaccination dose a minimum of 6 months ago. You can book an appointment on gov.bm by selecting Book a Booster Vaccine Appointment. Alternatively, individuals can call the vaccine hotline at 444-2498, selecting option 2, or email vaccines@gov.bm. For those who are 65 and older, they can walk into the Pier 6 Vaccination Center Monday to Friday to get their booster. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I would like to say this government is very aware of just how difficult it is to effect economic recovery while still in the midst of a global pandemic. At this stage, it is critically important for personal responsibility to come to the forefront. Wear a mask, practice good hand hygiene, keep physical distance from others, particularly in indoor settings and crowded outdoor settings. Download the WeHealth app and avoid the 3 C's of crowded places, closed spaces, and close contact settings. Mr. Speaker, we have worked hard and worked together to reach this point in the pandemic. Our continued commitment to robust public health protocols is critical, and I want to thank the entire Bermuda community for all of their efforts. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. The next statement this morning is by the Minister of Social Development and Seniors. Minister Furbert, would you like to present your statement at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the International Day of Persons with Disabilities is observed on the 3rd of December and has been promoted by the United Nations since 1992. The observance of the day aims to promote the rights and well-being of persons with disabilities at all levels of society and development. Also, it provides an opportunity to raise awareness of the achievements and challenges persons with disabilities face within every aspect of political, social, economic, and cultural life in our community. Mr. Speaker, the UN estimates that approximately 15% of the world's population, which equates to 1 billion people living with some form of disability. Disability is defined by the UN as a condition or function judged to be significantly impaired relative to the usual standard of an individual of their group. It is often used to refer to individual functioning, including physical impairment, sensory impairment, cognitive impairment, intellectual impairment, mental illness, and various types of chronic diseases. Mr. Speaker, under the Human Rights Act of 1981, disability is defined as the condition of being a disabled person. The said act defines disabled person to include physical disability, physical reliance, for example, on a guide dog, or previously has had a mental impairment that has substantial and long-term adverse effects on the person's ability to carry out normal day-to-day activities. Mr. Speaker, this year's theme is leadership and participation of persons with disabilities towards an inclusive, accessible, and sustainable post-COVID-19 world. With this theme in mind, the Ministry of Social Development and Seniors strives to make the promises made by the government which impact persons with disabilities and make it a reality. Mr. Speaker, the UN highlights the fact that evidence and experience show that when barriers to inclusion are removed and persons with disabilities are empowered to participate fully in societal life, the entire community benefits. Barriers faced by persons with disabilities are therefore a detriment to society as a whole, and inclusion and accessibility are necessary to achieve progress and development for all. Mr. Speaker, currently, the Ministry is in the process of working with the UK to have the UN Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities extended to Bermuda, to ensure Bermuda is an inclusive society that recognizes and respects persons with disabilities for their ability and not their disability. A formal register of persons with disabilities is being developed. The register aims to assist with data collection to provide projections for support services and benefits, which will ultimately assist in improving quality of life. Also, the register will ensure there is clarity of the current and future needs of persons with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, no person in our society should be left behind or feel ostracized because they have a disability. The government encourages dialogue on all forms of disability. This provides a platform to educate all sectors of our community to ensure persons with disabilities are given the dignity they deserve. I believe that more awareness of persons with disabilities ultimately will lead to more understanding and acceptance. Mr. Speaker, I would like to highlight some events that will be taking place in the community Friday, December 3rd, in recognition of International Day of People with Disabilities. Aging and Disability Services will be taking it to the streets with the assistance of Media Maya to engage persons in the city of Hamilton throughout the community to start the conversation and bring awareness of persons with disability. Also, this provides an opportunity to determine if people in our community can identify unseen, invisible disabilities. For example, autism. The intellectual disability team at the Mid-Atlantic Wellness Institute will be having a second motorcade. It is intended that the motorcade will start at 11 from Mid-Atlantic Wellness Institute. For more information, that will be provided through the media. Residents of Bermuda, I encourage you to show your support by standing along the motorcade route. Greenreach is hosting a one-day free virtual conference on Zoom from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. entitled Common Ground 2021. The theme of the conference is encouraging advocacy to ensure persons with disabilities are given their right to be heard on issues impacting their lives and across the community. The event will be facilitated and moderated by occupational therapist Alyssa Frick and Paralympian Jessica Lewis. Mr. Speaker, on Saturday, December 4th, Special Olympics Bermuda will be having their first polar plunge at Horseshoe Bay, starting at 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. The Polar Plunge is a fundraising event for the Special Olympics globally. This event has shown increased popularity in other jurisdictions such as the U.S. and Canada. Mr. Speaker, I encourage people to show support by attending at least one of the events I have mentioned. In closing, I quote the British neurologist Oliver Sacks, "I wish for a world, and in this case Bermuda, that views disability, mental or physical, not as a hindrance, but as unique attributes that can be seen as powerful assets if given the right opportunities. Let us come together as a community and provide opportunities for persons with disabilities so that we can create a better Bermuda." Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of Labor. Minister, would you like to present your statement at this time?
Good morning, Mr. Speaker.
Good morning, Minister.
I am pleased to rise today to provide members of this honorable House an overview of the role and functions of the Labor Advisory Council and the work that it will commence in 2022. Mr. Speaker, the LAC was established in the 1960s in response to the labor and social unrest that was taking place during that time. It is a non-statutory tripartite government board tasked with advancing industrial relations and garnering consensus amongst its members to make recommendations concerning legislative amendments, policies, and standards regarding Bermuda's labor force. The LAC is chaired by the Minister of Labor and comprises of representatives from government, employer groups, and worker groups as equal and independent partners, together seeking solutions to issues facing Bermuda's labor force through social dialogue. This form of social dialogue is referred to as tripartitism, and it is extremely effective as it allows for the views of each side to be taken into consideration when decisions are made, leading to more favorable outcomes for all stakeholders involved. Mr. Speaker, the LAC meets quarterly and has the ability to meet more frequently where necessary. Subcommittees of the LAC meet more regularly. The LAC will reconvene quarterly meetings in January 2022 and has a robust agenda that I will now share with the members of this honorable House. The agenda includes, but not limited to, further amendments to the Employment Act 2000, guidance on independent contractor contracts, and inequalities in the world of work. Mr. Speaker, further amendments to the Employment Act. The Ministry has identified areas within the Employment Act 2000 where further strengthening of workplace protection is required. The LAC will be asked to review and opine on a policy document in this regard, which includes, but is not limited to, the following areas: a requirement to notify the Ministry of Labor where an employer intends to engage in a mass termination of more than 20 persons. This will enable the Ministry to provide the necessary assistance in a timely manner to employers, as it relates to compliance with the Act, as well as to employees as it relates to seeking alternative employment and/or returning them for the labor force. Determining what constitutes end of layoff period. This will ensure that when recalling employees to work, there are measures in place that protect employees from consecutive layoff periods and clearly defining the end of the layoff period. The publication of employment standards. This will ensure that all employed persons, particularly work permit holders, are aware of their rights and obligations under the Act and who they may contact for assistance. Workplace inspections by the Labor Relations Manager. This will ensure that employers maintain adequate employment records in accordance with the Act and that employees have the appropriate access. Wage theft protection. This will strengthen employee protections, ensuring that there are adequate provisions to protect employees from employers who fail to pay employees for all hours worked, fail to make appropriate overtime payments, fail to allocate tips to employees, and illegally deduct or fail to make the appropriate statutory benefit payments. Mr. Speaker, provide guidance on independent contractor contracts. The ministry has received a number of concerns from workers and members of the public pertaining to unfair contractual terms and employment contracts that seem to take advantage of the current economic climate in Bermuda and persons' inability to find suitable and sustainable employment. The Act was amended to address this long-standing issue and allows for the manager of the Labor Relations Section, in consultation with the Labor Advisory Council, to issue guidance for the purpose of determining whether an employment relationship more closely resembles that of an employee than an independent contractor. The LAC will consider this issue and determine whether it is necessary to issue guidance in this regard and the contents of the same. Mr. Speaker, on the 23rd of November 2021, I attended the International Labour Organization Caribbean Labour Ministers meeting in preparation for the 109th session of the International Labour Conference. The LAC will review and consider the report submitted to the 109th session of the International Labour Conference entitled Inequalities and the World of Work. The LAC will consider this report as it relates to Bermuda and will seek to address the following areas: economic and social implications of inequality in the workplace, the main drivers of inequality inside of the labor market, and what effective, responsive policies and measures should be introduced to reduce inequality and promote productivity, including in the context of the recovery from the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, the ministry would like to take this opportunity to thank members of this honorable House for the opportunity to address them in this regard. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Minister of National Security. Minister, would you like to present your statement at this time?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Speaker.
You're right here.
Mr. Speaker, I rise this morning to provide an update on the work of the Ministry of National Security in addressing gang violence. Specifically, I will address some of the root causes of existing gang violence reduction programs, proposed programs, and our multi-ministry approach. Mr. Speaker, there are many reasons why individuals join a gang. Unfortunately, it is a lifestyle that is glamorized in television, movies, and music. A gang provides identity, respect, security, a sense of belonging, and support that they may not be getting at home or from the community. The reality is that for some, it provides a more attractive lifestyle than being a law-abiding, productive member of society. Gangs offer social support systems and the opportunity for financial gains that our young people are struggling to find through traditional home and work pathways. Mr. Speaker, the fact is that many of our young people are the victims of generations of economic inequality in Bermuda. the breakdown of the family unit, poor education, and employment opportunities make it very difficult to break the cycle and enable social mobility. Mr. Speaker, we will not police our way out of this problem. We must assist those who are engaged with a way out and tackle the root causes. We must provide opportunities to the next generation that makes being a productive and law-abiding member of society a better alternative than joining the gang. Mr. Speaker, through our actions, and in some cases our lack of action as a community, we have created a gap that gangs are filling for our young people. The Ministry of National Security's Gang Violence Reduction Team offers several programs that attempt to address this gap. Most recently, the Redemption Farm program has provided 15 men with a 30-week work placement. 10 out of the 15 trainees have now transitioned into full-time or part-time employment or into education pursuits. Mr. Speaker, the Gang Violence Reduction Team administers programs within every level of our public school system that provide pro-social networks for students at medium to high risk for antisocial behavior. Over the course of the summer, the Gang Violence Reduction Team partnered with local companies to provide mentorships and internships to students involved in these programs. The primary objective is to encourage a transition away from antisocial behavior into a life of meaningful work. Mr. Speaker, our goals are to change the pattern of behavior of individuals involved in group and gang violence and reintegrate them back into the mainstream society, to prevent teens and adolescents from joining gangs and engaging in antisocial behavior by reestablishing positive social bonds, to create opportunities of employment for young people and individuals who have previously not been employable due to antisocial backgrounds, to connect at-risk youth, men, and women with the necessary helping agencies that will aid in addressing mental and social health issues, to place more focus on fostering and sustaining positive interpersonal relationships. Mr. Speaker, the Gang Violence Reduction Team clients' life histories marked by poverty, violence, marginalization, and intergenerational abuse and neglect. Many have incarceration experiences or have pending charges and cases. The young men we support face additional challenges presented by institutionalization, discrimination, community judgment, major educational gaps, negligible work history, and criminal records and criminal proceedings, which can preclude employment. For many of our clients, substances are a way of coping with the pain of gang involvement, homelessness, and mental health issues. Mr. Speaker, to meet our goals, we are taking a multi-agency approach that includes the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Labor, the Ministry of Social Development and Seniors, the Ministry of Youth, Culture and Sports, the Ministry of Legal Affairs, as well as the Ministry of Public Works. We will also be partnering with third sector agencies and employers to provide additional services and opportunities for our at-risk youth, including counseling services, individual programs of social support and care, education assistance, mentorship, pathways to further education, opportunities for social mobility, careers guidance, family counseling and support, financial assistance, employment opportunities. Mr. Speaker, there is no one-size-fits-all, and each at-risk youth will be assessed to match the right services and programs to meet their needs. Mr. Speaker, we must work to rebuild the sense of community that has eroded in recent years. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, the next statement this morning is in the name of the Acting Minister for Works and Engineering, Minister Ferber. Would you like to present your statement?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Speaker, and good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to provide the House an update on the present critical status of the Tynes Bay facility. Mr. Speaker, 2 weeks ago on November 10th, in a press conference, I spoke of the critical state of Tynes Bay and our need to invest heavily for it not to fail. This morning, I will give an update of the ongoing battle the engineers and technicians at Tynes Bay are waging to get the plant back up and running, and the serious challenges we are all facing in terms of the island's ability to dispose of its waste. Mr. Speaker, the Tynes Bay facility is our only means of municipal solid waste disposal, and should the facility fail, it will mean the country reverting to landfilling. Mr. Speaker, sadly, I must report that we may very soon be at that point. For the last 2 weeks since my initial report, a crew of specialist boiler makers from Europe have been working nonstop to make repairs to both boiler units at the plant. At the same time, our contingency system, which normally bails refuse during these times of outages, also suffered a critical failure. In addition, COVID-19 and supply chain issues in Europe has exacerbated the repair of the baler to the point where our own employees had to skillfully fabricate replacement parts using 3D printed technology to rebuild a hydraulic ram. But sadly, even these efforts to get the system up and running have failed. Mr. Speaker, while we do have a replacement ram being air freighted, the timing for its arrival and the space left at the bunker to stockpile the refuse that is collected daily are simply at odds. In order to preserve what little space we have left, bulky waste material is already being diverted for shredding at the March Folly location for later disposal at Tynes Bay. But even this will not buy us the amount of time we need. Mr. Speaker, with a tentative time frame to have both boilers back in operation being still 2 weeks ahead, we will simply not have room to store any more garbage. As such, the ministry is now preparing for its last resort for waste disposal, and that is reopening a portion of Marsh Folly for landfilling. We had hoped to avoid this outcome and have done so for the last 10 years. But at this point, the options are few. We are anticipating needing to landfill for a period of perhaps 1 to 2 weeks while the boiler repairs are completed and the baling system is repaired. Once these alternatives are available, the landfilling will stop. While time is not on our side, we as a government are committed to doing something about it. I reported 2 weeks ago that we are looking to invest some $7.5 million into the plan to get it to a point of stabilization. Since that time, engineers have now received their actual pricing from specialized waste-to-energy contractor, ICAG, out of Switzerland, for the full scope of works necessary to get the boilers through the next 3 to 4 years. While our original in-house estimates were close, the true price is close to $8.5 million. That cost may still arise, as much of it is based on the cost of steel and other materials, which are changing rapidly due to the global supply chain crisis. Mr. Speaker, with the cost of baling and other associated works, such as quality assurance for insurance purposes, crane hire, and other on-island logistics adding to this figure, the final total for the project may be close to $9 to $10 million. It will take about 11 weeks for each boiler to be repaired. While this may seem like a lot of money for comparison, the cost of full replacement, which is what we really need at this point, is close to $150 million. And to be clear, the $10 million we are planning to spend now only address the boilers, which are at the heart of the plant and the most valuable at this time. But there are still many critical auxiliary systems at Times Bay that are past obsolescence that can just as easily shut down the plane if they are not soon replaced. So with life restored to the boilers, time will be of the essence to pursue the full solution of the $150 million investment. I'm pleased to report that the Ministry of Public Works, in conjunction with the Ministry of Finance, have met and are meeting urgently to find creative financing solution for such a large sum in our present financial state. Mr. Speaker, as mentioned, with the effects of the pandemic on supply chain and even getting people mobilized, these costs cannot be cast in stone, and we are constantly balancing the risk of getting support here as quickly as possible while providing COVID safety. With the support of our specialist contractor, we are aiming to execute the works in February of next year, leaving little time to even prepare. But the contractors and the ministry are committed to getting the work done as soon as possible. I will endeavor to continue to give updates on this critical work as if it transpires. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Members, the final statement this morning is that of Transport. Minister, would you like to present your statement?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Transport acknowledges the sobering fact that 16 lives have been lost to road traffic accidents in 2021. I extend my condolences to the families and friends that are grieving the untimely loss of a loved one. Mr. Speaker, with only a few weeks to go until Christmas, parties will be taking place, which is why the Bermuda Road Safety Council's slogan for December is Designate Your Driver. Mr. Speaker, a designated driver is crucial for everyone to enjoy a safe holiday season. Designated drivers are an integral part of keeping roads safe, and by educating friends and family, we can work together to lower the number of accidents and deaths. Mr. Speaker, an alarming trend observed by the Road Safety Council is persons choosing the person who seems least intoxicated of the group to get behind the wheel after a night of drinking, instead of a completely sober driver. That is why it is crucial to designate a driver before any drinking takes place. Mr. Speaker, with the holiday season approaching, there will be an increase in events and parties where alcohol will be consumed. The Bermuda Road Safety Council encourages all event planners, organizers, and hosts of large events to incorporate a transportation plan. For assistance with implementing a transportation plan for your event, organizers should, in advance of the event, email bdarsc@gmail.com. And I'll repeat that, bdarsc@gmail.com, or contact the road traffic officer at 707-2349. Mr. Speaker, we want everyone to have a safe holiday. If you cannot secure a designated driver, remember that there are always ways to get home safe without getting behind the wheel, such as hiring a taxi or a minibus, using Hitch or HomeSafe, or calling a family member or friend to come and pick you up. Additionally, I would like to acknowledge CATA for hosting their annual Let Us Drive initiative, which will take place on December 9th, 11th, 16th to the 18th, details of which will be announced in the media in days to come. Mr. Speaker, in December, the Bermuda Road Safety Council, in conjunction with the Ministry of Education, will launch the second annual 6 Road Safety Essay Competition on the topic, what dangers can you encounter when walking and riding your pedal bikes on the road, and what can you do to stay safe? Additionally, the first annual M1 Road Safety Essay Competition is on the topic, why do we have speed limits and why are they so important? Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Transport, the Road Safety Council, and the Road Traffic Officer will continue to work with partner agencies in the Bermuda Police Service and the Ministry of National Security to educate the public of dangerous driving on Bermuda's roads. The Road Safety Council will continue with its monthly public education and awareness campaigns. Mr. Speaker, we recognize the impact road sobriety checkpoints have had on road safety, and the Ministry of Transport will be working with the Bermuda Police Service and the Road Safety Council to reintroduce it for the holiday season. Mr. Speaker, the ministry believes that if we start the conversation on road safety with our children and everyone we love using Bermuda's roads, we can make better road safety decisions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Members, that brings us to a close of the statements for this morning. We'll now move on to other items on the order paper. The first item is the report of committees. Members, this is the question and answer period for this morning. And this morning we do have written questions, so we'll do the written questions before we go into the questions from this morning's statements. And the first written question this morning is from the opposition leader to the Minister of Finance. And they've been indicated that they would be responded to all requested and all response. Minister, were you trying to get my attention?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 18.4, with leave of the House, I wish to defer the answers to these questions to the next day of sitting. I've spoken with the opposition leader, and he has agreed with that request.
Okay, thank you. That was going to be my next question, that the two sides have worked it out. If you're both in agreement, the House will abide by that. So members, you heard that the written questions will be deferred to the next sitting for the Minister of Finance. The second written question questions this morning are from MP Dunkley to the Minister of Health. Again, there are three questions and each have an indication for all response. Minister MP Dunkley, would you like to put your questions?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Speaker, and good morning to colleagues.
Good morning.
The first question to the Honorable Minister.
I should say we have 60 minutes starting now.
Thank you, Speaker. The first question to the Honorable Minister. Will the Honorable Minister please provide this Honorable House the total revenue paid to government as a result of the travel authorization applications submitted each month, November 1st, 2020 through October 31st, 2021?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, the total revenue paid to government as a result of the travel authorization for the period November 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021 is already in the public domain. The period July 1st, 2021 to October 31st, 2021 is as below. July 21, $1,514,799.69. August 21st, $1,637,760.70. September 21st, $1,312,756.35. October 21st, $1,466,423.70. The total of those 4 months, $5,931,740.44. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Supplementary?
No, second question, Mr. Speaker.
I hear it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Honorable Minister please provide the House the total funds paid out to ResQuest or any other entity or individual due to contracts or expenses associated with the TAA for each month from November 1st, 2020 through to October 31st, 2021?
Mr. Speaker, the total funds paid to ResQuest or any other entity or individual due to contracts or expenses associated with its travel authorization for each month for the period November 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021 is already in the public domain. The period July 1st, 2021 to October 31st, 2021 is as follows. July 21, invoice 1833, $95,876. August 21, invoice 1904, $111,462. September 21, invoice 2017, $89,320. And October 21st, invoice number 2024, $120,093, total $416,751.
Supplementary?
Third question, Mr. Speaker.
What's your third question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Honorable Minister please provide this Honorable House the date of which the current contract with RestQuest expires and what are the terms of the current contract?
Mr. Speaker, the contract with RestQuest expired on the 31st of March 2021 with a month-to-month termination clause, which went into effect on the 1st of April 2021. Contract terms of reference continue under the month-to-month extension. With respect to the travel authorization contract and the terms and conditions, that matter is in the public domain. The following is with respect to the terms and conditions of the lab portal contract. Development scope phase 1. The scope of phase 1 is to create a system to enable Bermuda government molecular diagnostic laboratory to begin COVID-19 testing and to have the ability to run reports to provide results to their stakeholders. This will include the following functionality. 1.1, create and control interval testing times for one location and the Bermuda government molecular diagnostic laboratory. 1.2, each location will be named and can be tracked to each appointment. 1.3, set up multiple secure logins for administration. 1.4, set up multiple website pages, points of each location. 1.5, set up appointment web page for access by essential worker class. 1.6, set up appointment web page for general public. 1.7, provide unique appointment booking ID. 1.8, provide unique custom fields for data collection. 1.9, set up appointment manifests. 1.10, allow for updating appointment ID with test results. 1.11, set up data reports to download to Excel. 1.12, training and administration staff. 1.13, provide additional administrative support as required, subject to additional fee as set out in Appendix 2. Section 2, development scope, phase 2. The scope of phase 2 is to enhance the system to provide additional functionality, which includes 2.1, ability to edit appointment times and locations. 2.2, create inventory for additional locations. 2.3, mass edit of appointment times and locations. 2.4, timestamp tracking of edits and changes. 2.5, set up unique patient identifier to allow for retesting and tracking of appointments. 2.6, provide additional data text fields. 2.7, set up doctor administration personnel with logins and edit screens to review and update patient data and results. 2.8, set up doctor administration personnel with access to add a new patient file. 2.9, set up doctor administration personnel with ability to change time and location for testing. 2.10, email notification to patient when results are updated or changed. 2.11, create web page email for patient to review their information and results. 2.12, update report, status change report, and cancellation report. 2.13, training of additional administration staff. 2.14, provide additional administrative support as required, subject to additional fee as set out in Appendix 2. 2.15, set up server in conjunction with the government to separate the government data from all other data on the RestQuest portal. Item 3, development scope, phase 3. The scope of phase 3 is to enhance the system to provide additional functionality, which includes 3.1, create the ability to generate a permanent client record for organizations such as long-term care residential homes, the Department of National Security, etc., in a system such that A, lab test bookings can be booked against the permanent client record. B, all test results can be viewed within the client record. 4, system description. The supplier 4.1 will be using ResQuest, their proprietary software at the server, to deliver a customized solution to the COVID-19 lab testing system. 4.2, the software database is hosted by Microsoft Azure services under the direct control of the supplier. 4.3, the system is accessed by a Chrome internet browser. 4.4, the system is accessed by a secure user login. Section 5, system availability. System access will be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, except during any downtime due to system maintenance and or circumstances which are not within the supplier's control. 5.2, supplier will use commercially reasonable efforts to conduct any such system maintenance outside of normal business hours, weekdays 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time, and to advise client prior to any scheduled maintenance. Section 6, maintenance and operational support. 6.1, included in the administration fee as outlined in Appendix 2. 6.2, use and maintenance of the software, including hosting and maintaining servers. 6.3, ongoing license fees of database and software. 6.4, updates and patches to servers and database. 6.5, monitoring of all software, servers, and database performance. 6.6, dynamic syncing of data between servers. 6.7, 24/7 redundancy, backup, power supply, and data file backup. 6.8, server rental management and update. 6.9, up to 2 GB monthly data traffic. Fees applicable for excess traffic. 6.10, daily review of traffic and system performance. 6.11, minor modifications as required by ResQuest. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Supplementary?
Yes, supplementary, Mr. Speaker.
Which
The
is
minister,
supplementary?
thank you, Mr. Speaker. The minister did mention in reply to the question that we are on a month-to-month contract now since the end of March 2021. Is the minister able to inform the Honorable House how long this month-to-month contract will continue?
Minister?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, we are negotiating new terms and conditions, so it's hopeful that will be resolved in due course.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know that's what the minister said last time around, so I look forward to hearing the supplementary. Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah.
Can the minister confirm that from the original contract, when it went to month to month, that there are no changes in that contract?
That is correct.
Thank you, Minister.
Okay. That brings us to a close of the written questions.
Mr. Speaker, I have a supplement.
Supplementary?
Yes.
Okay, Opposition Leader, you want to put a supplementary? Go ahead.
Yes. Can the minister confirm whether or not we will be able to bring that service that ResQuest is providing in-house in government so that we won't have to outsource, given that we have a rather relaxed month-to-month agreement?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I am unable to answer that. I do believe that part of the process that's been facilitated here for ResQuest is quite extensive. Insofar as whether or not government will be looking to bring that in-house, those are discussions that we can have, but I can't answer that any further than that. And I would certainly disagree with the honorable member with respect to a lax contract. This is a contract that the month-to-month continues on the same terms and conditions as when we first engaged ResQuest. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Opposition Leader, you note the response. Any further supplementary from anyone? There are none? Okay, members, we'll now move on to the questions that have been asked, or indicated rather, in reference to the statements that were made this morning. And the first question is in response to the Premier's statement on the Joint Ministerial Council. The Premier, you have a question from the Opposition Leader. Opposition Leader, would you like to put your question now?
Thank you. Okay, there you go. In this statement, the Premier says, I met with William McFarlane, Director of Economic and Trade at the UK Mission to the EU, and they were, in essence, looking at how to deepen their connections. And he says these include important areas of vaccination equivalence, EU mobility, climate change, and follow-up COP26 and financial statements. I accept those comments. My question to the Premier is, what are the next action points for Bermuda? And what are the next action points for UK mission for the EU in regards to these connections and these initiatives that he showcased in this paragraph?
Thank you, Minister. Premier, would you like to respond?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Opposition Leader will know that Bermuda is not a sovereign country, and therefore our office in Brussels is not fully accredited for international representation and was only allowed to be set up with the permission of the United Kingdom government. We were actually due on that day to meet with the ambassador, the permanent ambassador to the European Union from the United Kingdom, and that meeting was confirmed. However, due to the challenges that the United Kingdom is currently having in its negotiation with the European Union over the Northern Ireland Protocol, the ambassador was called away to staff a cabinet minister, or to join the cabinet minister who was currently meeting with the commission on those matters. In regards to the follow-up on those particular issues, the UK representative in Brussels, the Bermuda representative in Brussels, Ms. Halia Had, works closely with persons in the UK mission on a number of instances, as that is the only way that there could be official representation on official issues. And so the meeting that we took with William McFarland was speaking on these issues. And one of the things that certainly which we are working on is the issue of vaccination certificate equivalence, because there certainly is we are part of the UK's vaccination program, and it's a tie-in matter to make sure that persons who are traveling to Europe with Bermuda vaccination certificate can actually go ahead and be passported into the European Union's vaccine and pass program, which is required for entry into a number of various establishments. In regards to further matters of engagement, I'm happy to, if the Honorable Leader of the Opposition would like to write to me, I can have the Brussels office provide him a full outreach of all their items, or I'm happy to set up a meeting with the Honorable Opposition Leader if you would like to understand what Ms. Halia Had is doing in the Brussels office, as she is a very bright, talented, foreign scholar and is doing great work on behalf of the government in Brussels.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would take the Premier up on his offer. And Ms. Hard, I know she's a very competent, very bright young lady, so I'm in question her capabilities or how she's performing her responsibilities. On the last page, the minister spoke about, Mr. Speaker, this is an opportunity to discuss Bermuda's broader interests vis-a-vis EU, ranging from financial services, social to innovations within Bermuda's digital assets and renewable energy sectors. This meeting identified potential synergies with SEPs and areas for future cooperation. Can the Premier provide more details on this statement, just for clarity? Like what synergies, and just provide more meat on this statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Premier?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this meeting was at the advice of our Brussels representative, and the meeting was to discuss with the Center for European Policy Studies and its CEO about what further engagement can happen between the government of Bermuda, as we are now official members of this particular think tank. The discussions were in regards to future engagement that would happen from ministers of the government in Brussels, events that we can put jointly host speaking engagements, so that the Minister of Finance, who will be traveling to Brussels regularly on matters of economic diplomacy and engagement with members of the European Commission on tax and other matters, to make sure that we can find ways to broaden the knowledge of what Bermuda does inside of Brussels and thought leaders inside of Brussels. What this is about further engagement. We have not been able to be on the ground in Brussels as a government and any official government representative since November of 2019. And so we are, I don't want to say starting from scratch, but we are continuing to make sure that we raise our profile and differentiate where Bermuda stands. And so it's important that we continue to spread the message. As it was stated in the statement, that this think tank is a very influential think tank in Brussels. It has a lot of thought leaders, and what we want to make sure to do is that when we are spending our money and making sure that we're doing outreach, that we're doing an outreach to the persons who can actually impact decisions and impact thought inside of Brussels. Bermuda is different. There was one meeting that was held with a particular member of the European, not of the European Commission, the Director General of FISMA. And one of the things which was said in that meeting, which was attended by the Minister of Finance, was the fact that Bermuda is held up as an example by the European Union of small island states who are excelling at compliance. The challenge is that inside of the sphere of Europe, that is not always known, and we are often lumped in with other jurisdictions. So our challenge is to make sure that we can differentiate ourselves, and the Brussels representative has mapped out a strategy for engagement, and this is one of the strategies for engagement. So we want to meet with the CEO, take the opportunity to meet with the CEO, And Ms. Sahada is going to follow up on further matters so that when the Minister of Finance travels next year and myself travels at the annual JMC, around the annual JMC, we can have a series of engagements which are set up at a higher level so we can impact the thought leadership and clearly differentiate Bermuda from other jurisdictions.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
None? Okay, thank you. Premier, there are no further questions for your statement. Members, the next statement that members have questions for is the Deputy Premier's statement this morning on his recent trip. Deputy Premier, you have a question from the Opposition Leader. Opposition Leader, would you like to put your question?
Thank you. On page 5, the minister said that Bermuda is the first overseas territory to participate in the UK Blue Shield program. Can the minister provide details in regards to the arrangement that's in place for the Bermuda Blue Shield program and what Bermuda's responsibilities will be?
It's totally funded by the
Deputy Premier?
Yes, just a minute. The program is totally funded by the UK government. We don't have any details as to the cost that they'll be deploying for the program, particularly our participation. It will be open to other territories, so it may be a wider allotment of what they're doing, but we are the first, as my statement says, to be a part of it. But all the funding related to this and Bermuda's responsibilities will be outlined to us further on as we engage further with the UK government.
Okay, so
Supplementary? Supplementary?
Supplemental. So we are at the starting point of this relationship, and our roles and responsibilities have not been defined yet.
Yes, we are at the start, but the UK government has already commissioned the technology that we will be using as part of the program. But we are, yes, at the start of it, and there'll be obviously, as the process has begun, more will be shared with us, and we'll have more discussions with the UK government as other components are put forward.
Okay, thank you very much.
Supplementary, new question.
No, I'm done, thanks.
You're done? Okay. Deputy Premier, that's the only member that had questions for you. We'll now move on. The next statement this morning that has questions is the statement by the Minister of Education in reference to the COVID update in the schools. Minister, you have a question from MP Jackson. MP Jackson, would you like to put your question?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, Minister.
Good morning.
My question, yes, thank you. The minister has made it very clear that it would take 80% of parent consent before schools would be open. That is consent for testing. I'm just curious what percentage of children do not have the consent and are still not in school?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for asking that question. Mr. Speaker, I can endeavor to get that information, but from my understanding, all of our children have consented to the pre-entry, and I do want to make sure that it's clear. It is the pre-entry testing that gets you into the school, and then the ongoing saliva screening is something that's a different regime. And so, from my understanding, all of our students who should be in school are in school. I have heard that there is a cohort of parents who refuse to test their children and want to keep them home, and that is a policy that we are addressing. And I've asked for that data, and I will endeavor to get that data to the House so we can know that. But from my understanding, it is if it does exist, it's a very, very small number of persons that haven't availed themselves of the pre-testing regime.
Supplementary?
No, thank you, Minister. Mr. Speaker, I think the minister answered my supplementary question. Thank you.
You have any further questions?
And no further questions at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you, MP Jackson.
Minister, that's the only questions for you today. The next member who's indicated they have a question is for the Minister of Health in reference to the minister's statement on the update of COVID management. And Minister, that question is from MP Dunkley. MP Dunkley, would you like to put your question at this point?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to the Minister of Health, thank you for the statement updating and the management of COVID-19. And we certainly support many of the changes that have taken place. Question to the Honorable Minister. In regards to page 5, where the Honorable Minister says we're looking at amending our requirements to ensure we're competitive. Certainly we support that aspect of it. And in regards to that, is the government currently considering any changes to the travel authorization application?
Minister?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the honorable member for his question. The purpose of the travel authorization serves a number of purposes. One is to ensure that we are able to keep contact with those individuals that may or may not test positive, and we need to trace them. However, admittingly, there have been discussions concerning making sure it's a little bit more user-friendly. So we are looking to continue refining the TA so that we can make sure that persons are able to not only provide the information, but as easily, as particularly for those of us that, like myself, are not necessarily tech savvy. So we are, to that honorable member, looking at the TA to see how we can perfect it and improve its functionality. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Don't sell yourself short as far as tech savvy is concerned. In regard,
Supplementary or new question?
this will be a supplementary, Mr. Speaker.
Okay.
Mr. Speaker, as you look to, and I will use these words, Minister, streamline the form, will there be any consideration to reducing the fee?
Mr. Speaker, I can't answer that at this point. I think we find that the fee of $75 is quite economical, and particularly in light of the numerous tests that persons do have included in that particular fee. So at this point, there has not been any discussions insofar as reducing the 75 travel authorization fee.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker?
Yes, go ahead.
In light of the fact that the minister stated that some of these changes are done obviously to stay competitive, which is always critically important, and also for precautions in regards to health and how we've made some progress. But in regard to the competitive aspect of it, Mr. Speaker, in light of the fact that some of our competing jurisdictions charge no fee for entry requirement forms, how does the minister attempt to address that when it comes to competition and people making choices about where they will travel or do business?
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Sorry, Mr. Speaker. I think at this point, the $75, recognizing that some jurisdictions do not have a fee for travel authorization, yet they do have fees for the requisite testing. So insofar as how much they're charging for a test, as opposed to perhaps having no fee for the travel authorization, we think that we are still competitive in that regard. It is only $75, and the PCR test on day 4 and or day 10 and the other testing, as well as the departure test. Most of the jurisdictions, the persons that travel from jurisdictions to Bermuda, such as the United States, require a test to get back into the United States. All of those tests are included in that one-off $75 travel authorization fee.
Okay, thank you, Minister. That's your second supplementary. The first question. Do you have a second question?
No further questions, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Minister, that's all the questions for you this morning. The next minister who has questions this morning will be the Minister of Labor. Minister of Labor, the Opposition Whip has questions for you this morning. Opposition Whip, would you like to put your question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the Honourable Minister. Would the Honourable Minister, with respect to the matter raised by the Minister in his statement on page 2, this is where the Labour Advisory Council will be asked to review and opine on a policy document. One of the policy positions they will be asked to review on is number 1, a requirement to notify the Ministry of Labour where the employer intends to engage in mass terminations of more than 20 persons. The LAC will be asked to consider whether the Ministry must be enabled, whether whether there must be a requirement on the employer to notify the ministry. My question to the minister is, what specific actions can the ministry take at this point to intervene when we have mass terminations of more than 20 persons?
I believe, Mr. Speaker, I believe that once we are notified that terminations are taking place within our employment establishment, we do make contact with the company. We do walk them through the legislation as it pertains to their requirements. And then we ask if we can have an audience with the staff so we can provide them with information as to how they can receive support. But that is reactive at times after we may hear an announcement in the media or from a staff member who may complain. What we want to do is be a little bit more proactive so that we have the ability to provide these services in a more timely manner.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Supplementary, what are some of the potential interventions or actions that the government will seek to raise at the LAC's review of this policy?
Well, number one, you have to deal with the matter on redundancy pay, ensuring that employees that are being terminated, their redundancy pay calculations are actually correct. Number two, we want to see if there is any capacity for the company to retain the individuals that they seek to make redundant in alternative positions within the company. Number three, making sure that they have the necessary support from the company as it may pertain to future career advice. We've been able to facilitate companies working with employment agencies to assist with finding their employees alternative employment. Once persons are made redundant, if there's no support by the company, then the Department of Workforce Development may be able to assist employees. If individuals are in financial need, we can provide them with clarity on how they can apply for the social protections that the government supply. So certainly it will vary based off of different situations, but we want to seek to provide services to both companies and employees.
Thank you, Minister. Further supplementary or a new question?
A new question, please, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, we'll take the other supplementary for your new question. MP Jackson, what's your supplementary?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's just a quick question for the minister. I'm just curious whether within that policy there's any identification as the reason why a redundancy is taking place. Whether there's a checkbox for, it's being outsourced or they're, reducing the size of the business or any reason why redundancies are taking place. Is that provided in the policy? I just don't know, and I'd like to know the answer.
Answer.
Mr. Speaker, I think that will be some of the matters that the LAC are going to be asked to opine on. And so there is no policy document that has been produced, but those are relevant questions that we have to determine whether or not there should be some sort of statutory requirement for a company to supply to the Ministry of Labor when these redundancies occur.
Supplementary or? No? Okay. Officer Zerip, would you like to put your second question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. With respect to the matter raised by the minister in his statement on page 3, number 4, still regarding the further amendments to the Employment Act that the LAC will consider. The minister stated that one of the considerations for the LAC will be workplace inspections by the labor relations manager. To that end, does the Honorable Minister or government have a position on how employers would be selected for these reviews at this point?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I don't want to use the term selected for reviews. Most times things will be based off of level of intelligence or complaints received from employees. We've had employees complain about they do not have access to their employment files. We also have employees in domestic settings who have complained that their travel documents have been retained by their employer. These are things that, once that complaint is received, we should have the ability to go into the workplace and request that documentation, or ensure that the employee has access to that documentation.
Thank you. Supplementary?
None, Mr. Speaker.
Further question?
No further questions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Minister, that's the end of questions for you in your statement this morning. We'll now move on. The next statement that has questions this morning is a statement from the Minister of National Security. Minister, you have questions from two members, in fact. The first is from MP Dunkley. MP Dunkley, would you like to put your question now?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Honorable Minister for this statement this morning. On page 2, I believe the Minister mentions the National Security Gang Violence Reduction Team, GVRT. Can the Honorable Minister please inform the Honorable House who actually makes up the Gang Violence Reduction Team?
Thank you. Minister?
Shorty. Good morning, member. Thank you for your question. The Gang Violence Reduction Team is made up of Pastor Leroy Dean as the coordinator, Mr. Darren Woods, and Mr. Lynn Landy are the persons on a full-time basis, and then there are persons who are called in to deal with situations as they arise sometimes.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Supplementary, yes, Mr. Speaker. The terms of their contracts the same as previously put out in the public domain?
Yes, they are.
Further supplementary?
Yes, further supplementary, Mr. Speaker. How is success measured for the Gang Violence Reduction Team?
Mr. Speaker, that question is often challenging and difficult to answer, and I'm sure the member, having sat in this room, can appreciate that. But what we do, there are things where you can measure, and that would be like, for instance, we spoke about the fact that we had 15 persons that were in our work placement program, and 10 received full-time and part-time jobs. So we would see something like that as a success. But the fact that we are out there, we are engaging the community, and our hope is that persons are continuing to look at a lifestyle that offers an alternative to a gang lifestyle.
You had two supplementaries and second question now. Check to your second question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, second question. Further on down in that page, the Honorable Minister mentions that the Gang Violence Reduction Team administers programs within every level of our public school system. Can the Honorable Minister please provide a specific mention of what programs are currently running in the public school system?
Surely. At the primary level, you have the Kings programs, and the various schools have named their Kings. One school called their Kings the Hype Kings. That is at the primary level, and that's where some at-risk students have. This is a program where they come on a weekly basis. Actually, it's a few times a week, and they come in. There are counselors and persons from the Gang Violence Reduction Team who work with these children on a weekly basis. We recently started a Queens program in the schools that are identified as at risk, and that's to be able to assist young women and to also encourage them at a very early age that there is an alternative to gang lifestyle. So that would be at the primary school level. There's an engagement program that happens at the middle school level as well, and the Gang Violence Reduction Team basically can be found in our public schools almost on a daily basis. And then they also have an engagement program at the high school level as well. And all of this is in hopes of continuing to have engagement and interaction and be able to constantly push the narrative that there is an alternative to a lifestyle of gang.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Yes, first supplementary, Mr. Speaker. The Honorable Minister, are the GREAT programs still functional in schools?
The GREAT program was generally run by the BPS, and I'm not sure if it's completely functional, but it's actually been something that we are talking about if there had any benefit and keep it going. Yeah, the answer to that, Ms. MP Donkey, is actually it is yes. But what we're doing now is we're looking at all our programs to see what we can do to even make them even more effective.
Supplementary?
Yes, second supplementary, Mr. Speaker.
Uh,
Are any,
ahead.
thank you, Mr. Speaker. Are any of these programs offered in private schools?
None of the programs are actually offered in the private schools, but the private schools have access to the gang violence reduction team. And there has been occasion when they have reached out for assistance if they've needed it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any further question? Third question?
Third question, yes, Mr. Speaker. At the very end, the Honorable Minister says, and I quote, "We must rebuild sense of community that has eroded in recent years," and I'm sure most members of Parliament will support that. So in regards to that, Mr. Speaker, what are the initiatives and what is the plan to rebuild that sense of community?
Mr. Speaker, I think on page 3, I spoke about what our goals are, and also on page 4, I spoke about the multi-ministry and the partnering with the third sector agencies and employers.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker?
Yes.
Yes, so in regard to that, I acknowledge that, but a lot of that has been in place for many years. So, Mr. Speaker, what's going to be different this time around, and does the minister have adequate funding to meet those goals?
Minister?
Surely. Some of the programs that were already existing continue to go on, and that's because they are programs that work. One view that we've taken that is different, MP, is that on page 4, you'll see where we said that to meet our goals, we're taking a multi-agency approach, and we speak of the various ministries that we believe could have an impact in gang activity. So as we move forward, we are looking to have this not so much as just national security being involved in this, but the various ministries that can have some input in gang activity will also be involved, and we'll sit around the table and we'll have discussion. And in terms of funding, we continue to work with the funding and ensure that there is funding for the programs within the gang violence reduction team suite.
Thank you. So, seconds up?
Yeah, seconds up. Thank you, Minister, for that answer. Very familiar with those cross-ministry initiatives from my time with the ministry. The supplementary, Mr. Speaker, the minister has said in this statement that we will not police our way out of this situation, and we fully support that. Can the ministry provide assurance that there is a very, very close working relationship with the police to ensure that all the goals are met in the most productive way, and that offenders are also brought to justice?
We have surely. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, we do have a very good working relationship with the DPS, but the gang violence reduction team is still part of the Ministry of National Security.
Thank you. Understand that.
Thank you. You've used up all your questions for this statement. Minister, there's another member who wishes to put a statement, a question to you, brother. And before I acknowledge that other member, let me just say that Minister Ferbert, your statement on disability, there was a member who had a question for that as well. So I'll come back to that one after we finish with Minister Meeing. Minister Meeing, the opposition whip has a question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With respect to the matter raised by the minister in her statement, specifically on page 3 of 5, that reads, the Gang Violence Reduction Task Force clients. Would the Honorable Minister please inform this Honorable House what portion or by way of percentage, or how many of the persons currently identified by the Bermuda Police Service as either gang members or persons of interest concerned in gang life are clients, as described here, of the Gang Violence Reduction team?
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, that question I would not have the answer through my statement, so I would have to revert to that member with that information.
Okay. Supplementary, well, no supplementary at this time to that one. Do you have another question?
I do, Mr. Speaker.
Second question, yes.
With respect to that same statement, second question, what is the plan of the gang violence reduction team when self-identifying gang members or persons of interest concerned in gang life, as identified by the Bermuda Police Service, refuses the opportunities that are provided by the gang violence reduction team?
I'm sorry, member. So you're asking me if the services of the gang violence reduction team are offered in terms of an alternative to a gang lifestyle. You're asking me what will that person do?
Mr. Speaker, with respect, I was asking, is there a plan for the gang violence reduction team if a person turns around and says, "I don't want your help. I love the gang lifestyle and I want to stay in it forever"? Does the gang violence reduction team have a plan for that scenario?
Mr. Speaker, my response would be that the gang violence reduction team continues to engage the community as a whole in terms of building relationships. And I would think that the continuous engagement and hopefully through the relationship, they can deter that person's thing.
Is there a supplementary to that or a further question? None? Okay.
Further question, Mr. Speaker?
Further question? None?
Further question, last question.
Yeah.
With respect to the matter raised, still on page 3 of the Honorable Minister's statement, one of the goals is to prevent preteens and adolescents from joining gangs and engaging in antisocial behavior by reestablishing positive social bonds. My question to the Honorable Minister is, how do you measure how successful you are at that goal of preventing preteens and adolescents from joining gangs?
Mr. Speaker, I just answered a question with regards to how do we measure the success of the gang violence reduction team, so I'm not going to repeat that. And I've also answered with regards to the programs that we currently have available through the various school systems.
And we'll take it that the answers you gave to the first question is similar to this third question. They can reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That would be correct.
Okay. Supplementary?
None. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're going to go to the statement by Minister Ferber in reference to disabilities, the International Day of Disabilities. The MP Pyramid has a question for you, Minister Ferber.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Minister. Yes. Minister, in your statement this morning to the House at page 2, you say that the ministry is in the process of working with the UK to have the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities extended to Bermuda. What are the practical impacts, as you see them, of an extension of the 2006 Convention to Bermuda? In practical terms, what do you think that would mean to the island?
Minister?
I'm sorry, I was on the wrong screen on my computer. The practical is to identify the strengths and weaknesses of where Bermuda is as far as services for persons with disabilities. So that's the practical element. And then it gives us goals to work towards strengthening.
Supplementary. The convention by Article 9 provides rights of access. Is that something that government has prepared an impact assessment on?
Understood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So access has been looked at in many policy papers throughout Bermuda. So access is an area in which we are looking at.
Supplementary?
Yes. I mean, if the convention were implemented here, there would then be a legal obligation of access. So I'm just wondering what that looks like in terms of the stated plan to extend the convention to Bermuda.
So that, Mr. Speaker, That is a very broad statement in regards to access. So we will be looking at access, but then legislation could be created to determine what access could be for our country. But that's a very broad statement, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. You used your 2 supplementaries. Would you have a second question?
Yes, please, Mr. Speaker. Second
What's your
question.
second question?
What is the timeline in the minister's view of the extension of the convention and the granting of access?
Mr. Speaker, we don't have control of that, but right now we're waiting for information back from Chambers.
Supplementary?
Supplementary.
Yes.
Minister, I mean, are you committed to this? Is this something that Bermuda can look forward to seeing soon?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure that that member would know that I'm very committed to this.
No further questions, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, thank you. Members, we move on to questions in reference to the statement from the other Minister for it, in reference to Tynes Bay. Minister, 2 members have indicated they have questions for you. The first is from MP Kennedy. MP Kennedy, would you like to put your question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is my video on?
No, oh, here it is.
Yes. Oh, it was on that time, it's just going off.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Considering that,
Okay, you one now.
so just tilt this a little bit here. Considering the acting minister said that the ICAG is actually coming in and going to spend about 11 weeks to fix these boilers, is that saying that both boilers will be fixed in 11 weeks, or is this something that we'll have one fixed and then we'll have a second one fixed thereafter?
Sorry, both of them should be fixed. Mr. Kennedy, not remember. One after the other.
Okay, supplemental. Yeah.
Yes, supplemental.
So, yeah. So considering the dire state that we're in right now, when exactly was the ICAG contacted to come in and assist with helping fix these boilers?
Honorable members, you may recall that some machines went down a couple of weeks ago, which we did notify the public about, and they were fixed. The boilers were actually fixed due to welding, but now there's a further breakdown.
You're saying in both, or
both of them went down? Yes.
Okay. Another supplementary?
Yeah, second supplementary. Some of these things are difficult for sure to try and predict. But these things, these boilers, having been involved in Tynes Bay, they do have a shelf life. Were we aware at any time that we were nearing kind of the rejuvenating of these boilers, or having to take some drastic measures prior to this last couple of weeks where they were notified?
I'm good, honorable members. Ask the question. This information was aware in 2009. At that time, the Progressive Labour Party spent $22 million to upgrade the system. That was 2010, 2011. 2012, another report was done. I think it was June in 2012. But from 2012, Mr. Speaker, from 2017, no additional work was done on oil other than just the maintenance. More money was spent on another place called America's Cup, that in fixing the boilers that should have been taking place.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary, we have a supplementary from MP De Silva. It's a supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, I know you're acting minister, but was there any correspondence paperwork found in the ministry in 2017 after the OBA lost the election that gave any indication of what they had planned to do going forward?
I don't think so. I remember. I don't know, but I can say right now from 2012 to 2017, when the information came out that will cost about $95 million around that time, it was June 2012. No further action was taken by our former government from 2012 to 2017.
Supplementary?
Thank you.
Supplementary?
No, thank you, Minister.
Okay.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker.
MP Canada, do you have, MP Canada, do you have a supplementary? Or further question?
Yeah, I do. I'd like for the acting minister to provide some information as to no investment into the Tynes-based incinerator going forward from 2012 through to 2017, because I am keenly aware of several, quite a bit of money that was invested in Tynes Bay incinerator to upgrade it during that period of time. So if he can provide that information, that would be great.
Senator, Mr. Speaker, the honorable members can look into the budget book. It's all to do with expense and maintenance.
Provide that information, and
Is it the budget
million
book?
Tynes Bay for sure.
Okay, questions, ma'am, if you have a question. Does anyone, I saw I heard another voice. I saw I heard another voice. Is someone else trying to put a
Supplementary,
question?
Mr. Speaker.
I have a second question as well.
Okay, well, let the supplementary go because it'll be related to that question that would be asked now. MP Pyramid, you have a supplementary?
Yes, I'm curious, Minister, why you stopped at 2017 when that was 4 years ago? What have you done since 2017 if you're going to play politics?
Well, I'm not quite playing politics, Mr. Speaker. 2018, a further report and study was done by the team down at Tynes Bay. That was late 2018. As we all know, what happened in 2019. We got the information back in 2020, and the government's been working on that the process ever since then.
Okay.
Must have been a long paper. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary?
No, thank you.
Thank you. MP Pyramid, you indicated you have additional questions. MP Canada, rather. Would you like to put your additional question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just curious as to whether or not the government is now looking at any other waste to energy management systems.
Understood?
I'll have to get back to you on that. As you, not that I'm aware of, but I can get back to you on that. I don't remember. But we are at a critical stage right now, and the government will be spending additional money to get the system back up in place within the next, by February, and then that would hopefully last for about 3 years while we're working on the $150 million replacement.
Thank you. Any additional questions, any member? None, supplementary? Thank you. We have MP Pyramid, who also like to put questions to you. Minister, MP Pyramid, would you still like to put your question, or it's your supplementary coverage?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, put your question.
Minister, at page 4 of your statement, you refer to the work for each boiler to be repaired for 11 weeks, period. At page 5, you say we're aiming to execute the works in February of next year. Are the works referred to at page 5 of your statement the boiler repairs, or are they the $150 million overhaul?
Just the boiler repairs, I remember.
Grateful. And supplementary?
Supplementary?
Yes, the contractors therefore referred to at page 5 for the February works are the contractors ICEAG out of Switzerland referred to at page 3, correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. Members, that brings us to a close of questions for that statement.
All right, Mr. Speaker, I did post, my apologies for late notice, but I do have a question for the Honorable Minister. I think we have 4 minutes left in question period, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, well, we still got one more statement too, but go ahead, put your question.
Oh, my apologies. Thank you. For the Honorable Minister, in regards to the matter they've raised on page 4, the Honorable Minister said there are many critical auxiliary systems at Tynes Bay that are past obsolescence and can just as easily shut down the plant if they're not soon replaced. Would the Honorable Minister be able to tell us just how many critical systems there are at risk at the moment that can shut down the plant?
At this moment, I can't tell you. I remember. I can get the information to you.
Supplemental, please, Mr. Speaker.
Sure.
What do we know? Does the Honorable Minister know the probabilities of critical failure at this point for those auxiliary systems?
I do not know exactly the percentage, but we thought that the boiler was fixed when we did the welding a couple of weeks ago. But things break down, and unfortunately, the system, as we said way back in 2009, has been identified as a problem.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Mr. Supplementary.
The repairs to the boilers, if they get made and the auxiliary systems aren't repaired at the same time, would the repairs to the boilers be made redundant if the critical systems go offline?
I'm sorry, can you repeat yourself?
Sure. There are repairs to the boilers currently proposed. However, we still have critical auxiliary systems that can easily shut down the plant. If they do shut down, will the repairs to the boilers be redundant?
I can't say about that. I'm being a technician myself.
No further questions, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, members. That does bring us to a close for the questions for the Minister of W&E. The last statement this morning is from the Minister of Transport. And Minister, we have a statement for you, a question for you from MP Jackson. MP, would you like to put your question to the Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, Minister. My question is around supply and demand. So as we enter into the Christmas period, the holiday season, what consultation or conversations are being had with the taxis, with the minibuses, etc., to make sure that there will be enough taxis and other transportation to meet the demands of the holiday goers that may be in Hamilton and around and about Bermuda that may need to have a hired service to get home after a party?
Thank you for that question. Bermuda has right now 600 taxis and 150 minibuses that are readily available at any time to service the public. And so therefore, we believe that the inherent infrastructure that is already in place will be sufficient to handle the demand over the holiday.
Supplementary?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Will there be any way to track how much demand supply is out there? That of the 600 taxis, how many of them are working, and is there any consequence if the supply of taxis, as an example, is very low and difficult for clients to get transportation home?
Yes, so there is a legislated mandate for the dispatch companies for the taxis to provide a report to TCD on a monthly basis, and that is the one way that we are able to track. But also with the invention or the introduction of electronic mediums, it is also able to get data from them as well. So we are able to.
Minister and member, that bell signified that we just used up the hour for question period. I thank members for their contribution. We've used the full hour, which is something we don't always do, so it was meaningful to have the interaction today around these questions. But it also brings us to 12:30. And Mr. Premier, would you like to do the honors?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, Deputy Premier here. I wish to move that we adjourn till 2 p.m.
Yes, members, any objections to that? Deputy, there are no objections. The House now stands adjourned till 2 p.m. Members, enjoy your lunch.